Right. Okay, come on in and grab a seat. Thank you all for your patience as we changed out microphones. I do a lot of conferences, and I have to say, I love CFOs. You guys are so much more considerate and attentive than most. Usually there's a break, everyone's gone. You guys actually stay in the room and are super engaged. My name is Andy West. I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel. I'm a senior partner at McKinsey & Company, where I lead our strategy and corporate finance practice, which means I spend a lot of time thinking about things like capital markets, obviously strategy, but also CFO and the role of CFO. I spend a lot of time researching trends in CFOs, and I just published an article for those of you that are interested on the role of AI, in particular, what use cases are actually being implemented. And so if you want to check that out, you can find it on my LinkedIn page, or look at mckinsey.com. But one of the things that research has made very, very clear is that it's an incredibly dynamic time with technology. We'll spend time talking about AI. Of course, there's a whole other panel on AI, but just technology in general. Just for a little data to warm us up, when we interviewed and surveyed CFOs last year at this time, we asked how many of you have more than 5 active AI use cases happening in the finance function? And the answer at that time was 7%. We asked again this year, and the answer was 44%. So that's an incredible change. Now, one of the things we'll talk about today, and I know is on the tip of everyone's tongue, is, well, where's the money? That's a lot of investment, that's a lot of activity, and is it coming? If you ask me, the answer is, of course, it's coming. We're in a revolution in terms of technology and in terms of how you all do your job. The core of that revolution is tech, right? Weird to say, in a room, it's not numbers, it's not finance, it is resource reallocation. But the CFO's role in the core of technology is incredibly important. So in addition to AI, let me just ask one other question, raise of hands maybe, just to get everybody, it's that time of day, right, to get everybody kind of engaged. How many of you are currently doing something with your technology infrastructure, making an investment or implementing something on the infrastructure side? How many, keep your hands up if you were doing ERP, something related to ERP, reporting software? I mean, it's just AI plus tech infrastructure plus ERP and software is kind of the core of your job. It's kind of becoming your day job, even if you're not a CIO or don't have technology reporting to you. So I have an amazing panel. We're going to talk about all of these things, how they come together, and I love that it's part of the theme of change management, because it is changing what happens in finance. It's changing the role of the CFO. It's changing what employees do every single day. It's changing how your investors interact with you, public or private. So it is a change management moment, and technology is driving that change. So with that, I will jump into our panel. Let me introduce, we'll actually have everybody introduce themselves in a bit, but we have Amy Butte, the CFO of Navan, James Rochette, there's James, who's the CFO of Anaqua, Matt Gorman, Dalix Therapeutics, and Vipul Shah, FinCor. Now, the cool thing about our panel is we also have a mix of people who do technology as a living, meaning their company's purpose is to drive technology, and all of them are CFOs in implementing technology. So think about questions. We're going to go to Q&A shortly. I'll get us started, but feel free to ask the panelists. They're eager to engage. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
I'm going to go down, James, I'm going to have you start just with a minute or two, just give us the context, and we'll just work our way down the panel. Kind of who are you, kind of what's on your agenda right now?
Sure, so welcome, happy to be there. I'm James Rochette, CFO of Anaqua. So Anaqua is a global SaaS company, roughly 200 million of AR, which manage intellectual property and innovation. And we have operation in the US, in Europe, and APAC. And so, I mean, it's definitely innovation is a core. What we're trying and what we provide to our customers is something which is simple but critical, is help the enterprise and the law firm to really support, maintain, and keep what is the ideas of the value of the idea of the company. So what is under the IP, which means the patent, the trademark, and the innovation pipeline. So this is the core of what we provide. So in the finance function, I cover the finance, the M&A, the integration. Anaqua is owned by a PE company, so value creation is a key track, part of this process. And recently, what we are focusing ourselves, and as you can hear with my accent, I'm French, so hopefully you can get it. We are focusing on how we can optimize and be more efficient in terms of producing our data. So key point we are doing is how we can integrate all the acquisition we did, how we can merge into one and single ERP, and how more recently, which is kind of a topic which is the underlying foundation of the AI, is how we can have one source of data, one clean combined source of data, which today allows us to have a dashboard where we combine the booking, where we combine the AR, where we combine the revenue and the P&L and all the KPIs, which become the source of truth for the key stakeholder, for our shareholder, and this all around the company, and became the instrument on how we take a decision.
Excellent.
Right.
Amy?
Hi, thank you for having me. Amy Butte. My background is helping companies go from private to public. I've done it as a banker, an equity research analyst, a CFO, and a director. I've done it 3 times as a CFO. The first one was the New York Stock Exchange when it went through its historic transformation from not-for-profit to for-profit and private to public. And most recently, very recently, less than 3 weeks ago, was helping to take Navan public. Navan is a modern travel and expense management platform. For those of you that think about what it's like to use paper and telephone, we changed the game. It's great to be a CFO talking to CFOs about something, a technology integration that does 3 things. One, it creates efficiency, right, in that we save companies about 15% on their travel budget. It takes less time to book a trip, from average of 45 minutes to less than 7 minutes. It has more control, so there's like automatic reconciliation and using AI for automatic policy confirmation. But even better, I like to say, it makes people happy, right? And it's not very often that in a technology integration as a CFO, you get to make people happy. And so we have a CSAT well over 95, which validates that it makes more people want to use it. More engagement means more savings, more efficiency, more control, et cetera. So it's a disruptor, which is really fun. Taking companies public is a whole other conversation.
And we have a different, we get a whole different panel.
Yeah, different panel.
Yeah.
I'm Matt Gorman, founder of CFO. CFO provides fractional CFO accounting and finance support to high-growth life sciences companies. So that's anywhere from new funding all the way up through and beyond IPO and M&A, and we support them through that entire journey. And so oftentimes we are responsible for the entire accounting and finance function of the companies that we support. So as you can imagine, we spend a lot of time designing, building, and implementing systems for those companies that are appropriately sized but ready for rapid scale. So excited for today's talk.
Excellent. Vipul?
Hi, I'm Vipul. I've had an interesting background. I started out as a coder co-founder when I was 18 years old, built my first business. It was in the financial data space. Sold that in 2005. Then went from knowing nothing about capital to getting pretty intrigued. I joined private equity, spent the next 12 years within investing in businesses like yours. And those 12 years journey led me to this third one where actually the whole conference has been around this topic of clean data. Well, we clean data. We clean it, we reconcile it, and we harmonize it. And we do that for financial teams. So we take the financial data, then we marry it with the sales and marketing data. So you know who your best and worst reps are, what your best and worst marketing strategies are. And then further, we marry it with your product and usage data. When you put all that together, you've really got an amazing data foundation that CFOs can leverage to drive operational excellence, make rigorous capital allocation decisions and grow enterprise value over time. And so when you hire FinCore, it feels like you've hired a 24/7 financial analyst on your team.
Excellent. So, all right, you have many different use cases, right, and different sized organizations, so hopefully representing the audience relatively well. Amy, I'm going to start with you. There's a lot of choice that has to go into making technology decisions, right? And there's a lot of hype that we've talked about in terms of AI, and as I mentioned it in the intro, is it actually making money? But talk about the process of choice, strategic decision making. How do you think about technology when you're making choices as a CFO?
So in context, and probably should have mentioned it, AI is at the core of what we do, right? The reason we can do what we do and save that money and create that efficiency is we've been using AI since the beginning of the company, machine learning, all the choices that you get when you're picking travel, and particularly in being able to improve margins to the point that we're not a traditional travel agency, we're a vertically integrated software platform. So just to give people a sense, we have grown our gross margins over 70% versus a traditional travel provider, which is in the mid-50s in the last 3 years.
That's your corporate gross margins.
That's our corporate gross margins. And we've done that because we've been able to use our own proprietary framework, which is called Cognition, to deflect customer support interactions to our customer support agent, Ava. And so right now, over 50% of all of our customer support interactions use Ava. So you don't have to wait on the phone, right? With all those problems that you can change your flight on the fly. So it's a cornerstone for us. So when we think about choices, when I've heard people talk about budgeting and planning, we think about how do we allocate that resource of cognition. Are we using it to continue to reduce COGS, expand gross margins? Are we using it to introduce new products, so to accelerate revenue? Or are we going to use it in terms of reducing OpEx? So for me, in terms of what I do within the finance function, it's almost like it's a standard to think about how can we leverage AI, because we are the best use case there is, right? And so we have some small use cases that I think are fascinating, right? Where it doesn't have to be a big technology implementation. And we also have an example of implementing Zip for a procurement tool. I love the small ones. I don't know if you want me to talk about them now or you want me to wait.
Well, no, talk about a couple of the small ones. And I think what would be also interesting is you talk about the 3 different types of impact. Do you debate? Is there a mix? Do you know how much you're going for margin or how much you're dedicating to some of these smaller use cases? Or how do you help the organization sort through hobby projects or exciting new ideas versus things that are going to drive the bottom?
Sure. I think historically the company has allocated all of those resources to the support use case. And this planning process, or the last year since I've been there, it's been much more of a decision about where to allocate them. And so it is a very, very much an active decision. I mean, you can always hire more engineers, but sometimes it's not just about hiring more engineers. It's like, how do you make sure you're using the best engineers or the best use cases for that? So we're doing both, and we've talked about I think the CFO of Tapestry was talking this morning about looking forward to using AI for travel. We think about that every day. But that's an active kind of resource allocation decision that we're making in the planning process.
And maybe we'll come back and talk a little bit about how you're making that pitch to others, but we'll come back to that. Vipul, I'm going to ask you the same question. Talk to me a little bit about some of the choices and how do you actually make strategic decisions around technology investments in AI?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Ann said. We're also an AI-first company, but I'm also our CFO and our CEO, so I cause the chaos and I try to control the chaos at the same time. And so every decision we make, we think about, can AI help in some way? Now, we've taken a pragmatic approach to saying, okay, what can AI do? I think of AI as like hiring an intern or a new junior analyst, and you have to say, okay, I need to check the work they're going to do. They're going to give me a lot of efficiency. They're not going to get bored. They're not going to get burnt out. But I need to be aware of the fact that the technology is evolving. So we use it throughout the organization. And the way I measure that is how is our revenue per employee doing? If it's not going up and to the right, we're probably not utilizing automation, ML, AI in the right way. So like one of our most recent wins is we process a tremendous amount of data. We have over 1 trillion records within our footprint because of the amount of data we bring together for our customers. So our hosting costs and data processing costs were going through the roof. And it was making it questionable whether we had a business that could sustain given how we needed to price the product. And so we looked into technology for processing data in a different way. We had to move away from a traditional way of processing, and we found data architectures and tools that the LLM providers were using that had even more, much bigger data footprint than us. It took our Amazon bill down by 70%. So when we think of AI, we're looking at all aspects of it. So that's just one example of we're not building our own LLM. But if we can utilize the tooling that the LLM companies have now afforded to be out there, it can impact your gross margin, OpEx margins across the fold. So that's an example of just hitting gross margins in the right way, something that becomes really repeatable and scalable. Then we'll look at, how do we think about BDRs? Are BDRs going to be there forever? Can we 10x a BDR? I think human interaction is going up and north to the value. I love what Professor Rupperding said, that human interaction value is going up. So we want to now have the right BDRs. How do we then 10x them? How do we give them the agents, the automation, and power? So that is how we're going through it across the org. From a policy standpoint, what we've done is we found that everybody in our company was using AI, whether we approved it or not. So we made it a policy to say, hey, let's get an enterprise license for everyone so there's responsible use of AI. And I would encourage every CFO in this room to say, get something for everyone, ask them what it is. So we have an enterprise license of Claude, ChatGPT, Cursor. There isn't something we haven't licensed, and now we're monitoring who's using what to get that down. Because then you can turn off the data sharing, because otherwise they're uploading your data into something and you don't know where it's going. So it's good to just have that budget. So our thoughts are, be pragmatic. It is getting there faster and faster. And if you expect the error rate from AI that's lower than you hiring a new employee, then you're going to fall behind on adopting AI.
Let's talk a little bit. I'm going to stick on spending a little bit. Matt, I'm going to come to you first, and then James, you're on deck, just so that you know. So thinking about evolutionary technology, and Amy, you touched on this a little bit too. How do you get comfortable with, these are like the special projects that you mentioned, right? But Matt, like this new technology, it might not be in the money. We spend a lot of time on things that are going to actually drive gross margin, is very clear. But there's a lot of spending that needs to happen on tech or value that might come. How do you think about that?
So from the smaller, high-growth company perspective, we look at it 2 main pillars. One is, are you putting the systems or series of systems on a foundation for rapid growth, right? But the other more important piece is the system flexible, right? Because what might work for the next 12 months as the company's going through rapid growth might not work for the next 24 to 36. So you don't want to box our companies in with customized workflows, very expensive implementations, only to have it change 12 or 24 months down the road. So we're always marrying those 2 pieces. And really when we zoom out, we try to think of 3 things. One, are we capturing the right data to enable KPI and managerial reporting? Do we have the right sound internal controls around what we're doing? And 3, is the data easy to understand, understanding where it's all coming from, and can we get it auditable? So if we're hitting the mark on those 3, we're feeling pretty good about the systems that we're designing and building.
Yeah.
Andy, can I say something kind of
please. Yeah,
controversial?
jump in.
Like, I think we're talking about these big integrations, and it is important to kind of, we do need to have big integrations, right? And if you want big change, you need to do that. But I also think we're still in that phase with your 40% of the CFOs that have AI use cases. At least for me, when I think about my team, we're really just looking for some small wins to show people, right? Whether it's to illustrate to more people in the finance team, or whether it's to illustrate to people across the organization that little things can matter, right? So even in transfer pricing, tax, documentation, we're getting massive wins in terms of savings. And I couldn't believe it because I asked somebody to update me. it's not just the 150,000 for fewer consultants, so I apologize to the advisors on that. But like, we've gone from 1 to 2 months to 1 to 2 weeks to do all of this really tedious documentation, right? Or we're using it for our enterprise risk management. We have our own LLM, Sage, that we basically put in our full risk matrix that we worked on. We put in input. We're a global company of everybody's point of view. And like, we're getting, 180% return on investment. We're only saving about 170,000 in terms of one person, but probably saving 50 to 200,000 in potential compliance violations, and also an 85 to 95% reduction in risk. So like, I think that to some extent, we can talk about big integrations, but I think there are little examples that are going to help us build our way to say, hey, now we're ready for this bigger integration.
We see it all the time at McKinsey, right? Where we're just giving access to the right kinds of tools and the right kind of environment and letting experiments happen. You never know where the value is going to come from. There's always something that's
and then they
exciting.
become the cheerleaders, right?
Exactly. James, what do you think?
I mean, on the being owned by PE, one thing we always look is how this tied to the value creation plan. So it's really, we have this vision of what we need to be in the next 5 years. So even if there's not necessarily a clear ROI on the short term, it's really how this fits within the value creation plan. So in other words, does it help on the ARR growth? Does it help on the margin expansion? Or will it help into optimizing, simplifying the organization, and therefore help us to be more efficient? So it's really this more kind of longer view on again, being more efficient. What we really look to do is growing the revenue without having to double or increase significantly the headcount, and therefore end up with an increase in terms of productivity, which will drive overall the value of the company. So this is a key point we need to look. At the same time, we also need to consider, if we don't do this investment, what is the cost of doing nothing? Because sometimes we will be like, oh, we shouldn't be doing, we don't have the bandwidth, whatever. And the fact of delaying this decision, in fact, put you in a state where things are taking more time, you're losing efficiency, and therefore you put yourself after in a less efficient way in order to, again, sustain your growth, being able to be more scalable and be more efficient.
Have you found that private equity owners kind of get that? I mean, there's always this sense that, oh man, the PE guys, if it's not actually earning any money, in the short run, it's not going to actually get approved. But have you found that
I think
the
it's
real
more,
flexibility there?
In my case, I think they have more longer view. Yeah. So it's 3-5 years, and less short-term view compared to the market.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we work with a lot of PE firms.
Yeah.
AI is the first time we're seeing they're just leaning in. They're saying, hey, and I equate it to like, I remember in the 90s when it was all about Windows, then the browser came along. And that was the new interface. I think we're now going from the browser to the LLM being the new interface. So we're seeing PE lean in, because that's our distribution models. We meet private equity firms, they introduce us to CFOs, and what we're hearing is AI, AI, AI. And they're attaching revenue per employee to that as a North Star metric so they can know whether their portfolio companies are adopting enough automation. And I think AI, I like what Jason Child said, is it's automation, ML, and AI. I'm using AI loosely. Yeah. I think we should think of all three of those things together because everything's evolving. But I've not seen this type of, and I spent 12 years in PE myself, the appetite for wanting to bring automation and AI in is pretty significant. And the CFO and the team are not being held to as scrutinous of a, hey, is the cash on cash return there? Is the MOIC there? What is the ROI? They're saying, hey, you have to do it. You have to lean in. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind.
I really like, and Amy, I'm sensing you want to jump in, so please do. What I really like about what you just said is this concept of productivity, revenue per employee. It's easy to think about something as AI, like AI as a use by, kind of case by case basis, and what's the ROI. But when you're turning on a new tool, when you're turning on a fundamentally new capability, you can see it almost between the numbers, right? If you're actually looking at productivity. And I found the simple question, are we more productive as a result? And are we in a trajectory for productivity to be much more empowering than a use case by use case. You still have to hold people accountable, but interesting way to unlock value.
Your comments reminded me of the conversation I mentioned to you earlier, where I was on the phone with the CFO, who's a prospect, very, very traditional firm that manages everything by consensus, and people are nervous with change. And she said, at some point, we're going to have to put not necessarily our money where our mouth is, but if you will, our cultural discomfort where our mouth is, because you have the board saying you must use AI, you have the CEO saying you must use AI, the CFO ready to use it, but we also know integrations and change are uncomfortable. And so I think companies are at that tipping point of traditionally they would kind of go like this, and now they're like, wait, we kind of have to jump into that cold water or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Let's shift to, did you?
I mean, one thing, I fully agree with you. The question is also, are you ready to implement this AI? Because a key driver and foundation to have it is to have data which is aligned, which makes sense, because chaotic data with AI will be even worse. Workflow not really aligned with agent will be chaos also. So it's taking the energy and the time to make sure the company is ready in terms of how this data is organized, as it's structured among the different regions, among the different products, among the different departments. And then once you do this heavy lifting, which requires a lot of work, being able then to really leverage and embrace AI. And I don't know if all the company are at the same stage on that point, but...
Agreed.
You're right, James. I once saw a really clean instance of Salesforce and NetSuite fully synced together, but then my alarm went off.
I was going to ask about that, and let me follow up, which is in a world of how important is data? Let's talk, because to your point, right? You can wait for perfect in order to get the functionality you want, and maybe it will never come. Maybe it's just a dream. But of course, you have to have good information in. Otherwise, if you're just going out to the web, you're just going to LLM, you've got hallucination, you've got marketing-driven data, you've got all sorts of issues that inhibit decision-making. So maybe talk a little bit about that. James, maybe talk a little bit about data is critical, but how do you think about the balance between perfection and action?
I mean, to your point, I don't think it needs to be perfection, but you need to get to a level where when you start to using this AI, it's not starting to hallucinate and give you total wrong decision or metrics. And so we are in the mix right now to be able to really align the data, and this was a heavy lifting and took us a lot of time. We still at the early age of how now we're going to really embrace AI and get to the next phase. So I'm very excited of this next phase, but I'm not there yet. But at least we can see that we have the readiness in order to be able to leverage what's coming.
Any other thoughts on the line between perfect and good when it comes to data?
Well, when you go public, you kind of need it to be closer to perfect, at least for KPIs and other metrics. But agreed, I think you can use some data for making shorter term decisions, but I think you also have to measure where you are in that private and public, which is clearly very on my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think clean data is it's a journey, it's not a destination. It's like cleaning your house. Every week, every day, every month, you need to continue to maintain and clean it. There's going to be spring cleaning. There's when your in-laws are coming over where you need to do a deep cleaning. And that's like I consider the audit or the diligence process. And then when you're going to sell your house, I mean, you're really going to get it clean then. So I think of data cleaning as a journey. So I don't think there's going to be a perfect answer. I think it's just going to be incremental improvement. And are you getting better and better each day when you do it? I think when you start to think of it as an episodic thing or a destination, that's when you end up in a heap of trouble because you can't react or decision at the speed that you need to.
Yeah, I don't know about you, my house is never totally clean. Right?
Yeah.
So I like that. Let's talk a little bit more about challenges to disruption. We talked about data. Amy, I'm going to go to you quickly. What else gets in the way of kind of enablement? And we spent a lot of time. The form is obviously in change, and there's the human components, there's data, but how do you think about the complexity of implementing technology?
It can't just be the technology, it also has to be the process. I mean, I mentioned we implemented Zip for procurement, and I kept saying to my head of procurement, are you all set to change the process? Because that's really what led us, this bad process led us to change the system. And they kept blaming the system for the bad process. Then we, installed the system, but nobody changed the process. And I said, we still have the same problems. Needless to say, we have a new head of procurement. So I think that I think that you have to remember, it's not just the technology, it's what do you do with it? Can we use technology to energize new processes or a reason for changing those processes? But they really have to go hand in hand.
And what's the CFO's role in doing that? Because you could say that, well, that's the role of a business unit leader. That's a CEO's job, or that's HR's job. So what's your role? What's your job as a CFO in terms of making sure those components are?
Well, in procurement reports to me, so in that case,
That's
it was
an easy one.
that was really, really easy. I think that what we're doing though from a strategic finance function is challenging people for those use cases. So we challenge our sales team to ask the question, how are you using AI? And it's fascinating, we're able to reply to RFPs faster. We used to not be able to reply to every RFP. And now we can reply to everyone using AI without adding resources. So I think our job, is to challenge different people in the org to find their own use cases.
Matt?
Well, one thing when I think about AI too is very practically, I'm in the billable hours business, and somebody came up to me, one of our biotech companies, and said, I put our stock comp calculation in ChatGPT, and it took me 3 minutes and 20 seconds to spit out an answer. He goes, why don't you do it and tell me what you get? And so, of course, it takes us a while to calculate and so on. And ours was right, but it was hundreds of thousands of dollars off from the AI tool, right? So for me, too, it's also like, how are we using AI, and do we know directionally what the right answer is so we're not being led down the wrong path along the way?
Have you found any examples of that in terms of how you're using AI that really, in terms of the human-machine interaction and getting the balance right between just asking a question and enabling your staff?
I'm still working on that. We work with very technology-first companies. I mean, we have companies that are, by definition, using AI to enable drug discovery, for example. So our pendulum swings in the complete opposite direction, where they want to use AI for everything.
Yep.
And then we try to balance what's practical, what's working well, and what's not.
Yeah, got it. I'm going to take us a little bit into the future, and then in about 5 minutes, we'll go through this. We're going to open to questions, so please, it's a lot more fun for all of us if you guys have questions. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. But Bipul, I'm going to go to you. Let's talk about emerging technologies, right? We've talked about AI, but bring us out into the future. Maybe not, we don't need to go to robotics and quantum and stuff like that. But if you're thinking about use cases that are on the edge, or what you see as leading and getting you excited right now, or kind of help everybody look around the corner, what do you see that's exciting?
So I'll come back to the example of I think what's happening right now is this sort of transformation we've seen before. I mean, how many people used Windows NT? Okay, right? So when the browser came along, we don't know which browser is going to win, right? People built a lot of things based on Netscape. People built a lot of things on a variety of these browsers. And then HTML5 came along, and you said, okay, I'm glad I built something browser-based. Similarly, you're going to see the same thing here. It looks like OpenAI is going to win. It looks like Claude's going to win some days. We don't know who's going to win yet. What we do know is the future is going to be LLM-based applications. So, I wake up thinking about what we're in the lab working on is, if you're familiar with something called Cursor, which a lot of engineers use, we want to build a Cursor for CFOs, where you're going in, doing your work in there. We were the first to introduce the Claude connector for CFOs, and it just allows you to work in a very different way. So I think where the future is headed is, you are going to do work, and we're going to stop talking about it as AI, and we're going to say, okay, I now have what I need to do built around LLMs. It's just think about browser-based application, you're going to start to say LLM-based application. And we're going to stop worrying about AI. Browsers came out, people were freaked out about security, people were freaked out about a lot of different things. Some of the same concerns from a pattern matching standpoint that you see with AI today. It's here, it's not going away. It's going to become normal case. The hallucination rates are going to lower. I still think they're better than when you bring on a new intern or an analyst. So that's one area we're seeing. Things we're working on internally for ourselves, I really like what Amy brought up on just what they're doing with support tickets. So we do a tremendous amount of data cleaning and reconciliation. So we are working for our own team's happiness and joy factor is building a reconciliation analyst. So when I look ahead, I try to think about, say, what is the manual, mundane, mission-critical work that people need to do? How can that go away? And any sort of, whether it's the industrial revolution, the internet happening, and now I think we're going through something pretty spectacular, it should take away the thing that really people don't enjoy doing. All CFOs I talk to, they're really worried about losing their right-hand person because they're going to get burnt out. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to do this work. So that's where we're seeing the future going. You're going to see CFO applications that look more like a Clay that your go-to-market team is likely using. They're going to look more like a Cursor. I don't know how many people use Gamma. It's incredible how easily you can make a deck now. And you want to focus on what's in the deck, not making the deck. Yeah. And you're going to see those kind of technologies for the finance org.
By the way, if you use Navan, we do auto reconciliation on all your travel and expense, which is the biggest spend that you have. I agree. And it's actually really interesting because most people hear AI. You have to remember there are iterations of AI over the last 10 years, right? And so, machine learning was kind of, probably second generation. Now we're on LLMs, and I agree with you, it's going to go exactly to that view.
James, how about you?
Definitely what is really exciting is the fact we will be spending more time on analyzing and understanding the numbers instead of producing those numbers. So, this is really the key. So, and the more we can do that, the more fun our job will be every day and more exciting.
Yeah, there is as much as I love, as I said in the beginning, the finance function, there is just a lot of reconciliation and pretty boring work, right, that people just don't want to do, exactly. If you think about it. And I've not thought of a function, except for maybe something like customer service. I work across lots of different functions in companies, and just the checking and the double checking and the synthesizing and the anomaly identification, it's not just LLM, or generative AI, it's all types of AI that's really well suited for that. So I agree. It couldn't be a more interesting time, I think, to be a finance professional.
And at the same time, what we do at Anaqua make sure is that the team is also trained on those tools. So we provide obviously all the tools, in order to be able to access to it, but also spend time in order to be trained and be able to know how to prompt AI, how to use it, and really take advantage of it.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to open the floor to questions. Hopefully you all still have questions today. Any questions from the audience? It's very hard to see.
Wow, no questions.
We're that good that no one has any questions. All right, here's one.
Thanks. So my question's for Matt. So you gave the example of AI being able to solve your client question a lot faster than your billable consultants. How are you thinking about that as your revenue model is billable hours?
In the example I provided, it was sort of a cautious case of the output was wrong from AI, right? So we just need to be mindful of how we're using it and not be completely blinded by the answer. But we're absolutely thinking about how can we automate that for more routine workflows, similar to what you were mentioning, sort of the junior analyst and/or intern, accounts payable, making sure that everything's coded correctly and runs up into the GL.
So, but if your revenue model is billable hours and you're making your employees more productive, is that an impact on your revenue as opposed to like Amy, where she can take her gross margins to 70%?
Sure. Yep, that's a fair question. And there's different ways to price. Some firms price by transaction. Right, so if you can train something to get more efficient along the way, you can think about different business models for sure.
Thank you.
I'm very interested in that response as well. So being in a billable hours business. Other questions?
So are all the MBA students, but yeah.
Yeah. Other questions from the audience? Okay, I'm going to just ask a few questions just about decision making. particularly around like actually getting into using AI and governance of AI. Because one of the, let me step up as the CFO, as an executive, right? There are choices that are being made around organizations, around where is AI, where should it be used, where should a human be in the middle? How do you think about just applying it in the right way from a governance perspective? What are some of the debates that you're having, and how are you thinking about that in your organizations?
So one thing we're doing is, I like Matt's example of the answer that came back wasn't right. One of the things we're doing is we've got multiple LLMs, use LLMs to judge each other. So a common use case we'll do is put a piece of work through, a body of work through LLM A, and then LLM B, and then have LLM C judge the two. And what we find is the error rate, the hallucination rate goes down, because between those three, one, you've got two different opinions, and then you've got a third one judging and deliberating on what's going on. So I think going solely with one LLM, assuming that output is correct, I think we're too early to assume that. So we're encouraging our team to say, look, use LLMs themselves to judge whether the output is good or not.
So that's the basis of Navan Cognition, our AI framework, right? Because you can't book people's travel and take their money if you're going to have hallucinations. It's okay if you're making emojis, but it's not okay if you're taking money. And so the framework is basically, you have LLMs who have very discrete tasks, but before they can act on those, they are surrounded by a fleet of LLM supervisors. So there's constantly asking questions and very little room for that hallucination to occur. And that's what gives us the confidence to be able to use AVA as part of that support offering. But I agree, it's 100% LLMs supervising or checking other LLMs is kind of where you have to go to make sure you don't have critical hallucinations when you're using it for critical decision making or accounting.
Yeah, we've done the same thing with Corey, which is our AI analyst. And there's 2-3 things you need to do. One is you want to have LLMs judging each other to make sure that the outputs look good. But I do think, there's no, it's not a zero-sum game, but there are investments you need to make if you're going to use AI that much. So testing in QA has become a much bigger requirement internally, because particularly we serve the office of the CFO, our outputs have to be reliable. And we heard, in some of the earlier sessions talking about deterministic versus probabilistic outcomes. And most everything that LLMs are doing is going to be probabilistic. But you can, with the right governors and the right testing and QA discipline internally. So today, when we're training Corey, we're going through and using it a lot to see, are the answers correct? And we're comparing it against, asking it to compare against the data. So when you first roll out AI internally, because I'm sure most of your organizations are thinking about doing something for your own product, look at ways how you can QA, and that needs to be part of your responsible use policy for your engineers, for QA, for the business people. Because right now, some people get really excited about releasing AI, and if they're not testing it properly, you're going to end up in a situation where somebody's supposed to go to Birmingham, and they're going to end up in Birmingham, England, and not Birmingham, London, right? To your point. And that's why you're having somebody look at that. And you don't want, net retention or retention and churn getting swapped, and you get the wrong KPI out, and that's not going to be a lot of fun.
I'm going to keep looking for questions if anybody has one. Okay. Oh, one in the back there. Yes. You have a mic coming your way.
Hi. I am curious. You speak a lot about AI being better, faster, cheaper than maybe an intern or an entry-level analyst. How do we plan to support the future workforce coming in then if we would rely on AI rather than hire somebody right out of college or looking for that opportunity while they're in school to get the experience and work their way up?
James, you want to
I
start?
mean,
Yeah.
in my sense, it's they're not in opposition in the sense where you will still have an intern someone who starts his career in finance, but will be able to leverage AI to spend more time in adding value, trying to understand the trend, trying to understand the story behind the numbers. Is not necessarily spending all his time putting together the numbers, which will allow him to really understand what's the mechanic behind it and what is the story you need to figure out. So me personally don't see them as in opposition. And in contrary, it can maybe help him to have something more interesting as a start instead of when you had the intern who was just doing photocopy. I mean, it's a different parallel, but it's not that necessarily will bring him all the value. Having this tool in his hand will allow him to kind of upgrade the game, and everybody will benefit from it.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have a lot of young people within our company who are very much a part of our cognition team and our engineering team, because in many ways you just are looking for smart people. It's kind of a different way to code. And so I think those are opportunities. And I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I'm in alignment with Vipul, which is that individual interactions still matter, right? So even though we're seeing these increases in use cases for AI, we're also still seeing massive increase in business travel. So people still want that one-on-one connection. And maybe the job, instead of being an analyst just at a computer, needs to be something that's much more around connecting with people. We put out our Navan Business Travel Index in, early November. It was September to September, and business travel was up 20% year over year, same store sales. And TSA was only up 0.6%. So I think that in-person connection isn't going away.
Matt, you're in a people-based business, Matt. Anything that you would say about that, about talent? And
I think their perspective is probably better considering we work with smaller companies.
Yeah.
Less focus on that.
Yeah, got it. Paul, you wanted to say something?
No, we're continuing to bring in people straight out of school as well. It says there I'm an MBA 07 from Sloan, so I'm not below 25, unfortunately. But I did like what came up in the earlier session is hey, their ability to think in a different way. So, we hold, AI show and tell every Friday. And it's pretty interesting to see everybody's coming up with innovative ideas, but the younger team members are coming up with brilliant ideas because they're unconstrained in the way they're thinking about things. So I would agree with James. I don't think it's at odds. It sounds like that a lot of times. Even when we present our solution to a finance team, at first it'll make a junior analyst nervous until they internalize it. Wait a second, I was going to have to do the data cleaning and the curation. Now I get to actually consume the data and my job is going to be more elevated. So I think the folks that embrace it, but I don't see that going down. We're continuing to hire straight out of undergrad. We're continuing to hire experienced people. We're hiring across the board. And we're very RPE, revenue per employee obsessed business that's AI first.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask just a quick question. I'm going to take us out of, because we have a whole other panel on AI, and of course, we always go there because that's such a fascinating time. But one thing that's on your mind that has, from a technology perspective, that is not AI related, what are you thinking about? And I'll as you're thinking about, because I didn't prep them with this question. So, and one of the things that I, for example, find on people's mind is shared services. And how do I think about where work gets done? And therefore, how do I think about the amount of technology infrastructure that I need? Or we talked about ERP is still a big thing in terms of building and driving data. So what's on your mind that, as a CFO, that is not AI or Gen AI related?
We just made a huge number of investments, changes in a lot of our processes over the last year to get IPO ready. And my message to my team right now is, how do we operationalize all of that? So we've built a global data warehouse, but how do we operationalize it to make smarter decisions, right? We introduced this new procurement technology. How do we operationalize it to take to the next level? So my message to the team is, how do we go next level with what we've done? AI might be a part of it, but it's not, it's how do we leverage the technology that's there as a whole?
We're looking with the two hats I wear, we're looking at product code, people code, process code. There's three things, those three things make up a lot of what's happening in a given business. And we're trying to look at, this getting completely away from any kind of AI, is where are we using people code where we could have better process code? Where are we using process where we could have better product? And I think to run in this new environment where competition's higher, cost of capital is higher, and productivity is under pressure, I think if you can start to optimize, how do you become as much as possible reliant on product code, then on process code, and then on people code. But I think all three have to be there for it to be able to work. So we're looking at areas where we're just not doing a great job on process. I like what you said, Ann. There's so much low-hanging fruit. I think there's a lot of fruit that's laying on the ground if you could pick up and just focus on the process side.
Yep. One more question, or I'm going to ask one more. Anybody from the audience? Or it's so bright, it's hard to see, so I shield my eyes just to see you all out there. I'm going to ask one question before I give you each a chance from a closing perspective. The theme is change management, right? And kind of people at the center of all of the things that are happening. And obviously, as I said in my intro, technology change is a big deal for human beings in lots of ways. What's one change management topic that's on your mind, either in terms of the what is the problem or the how you're addressing it? James, I'm going to start with you.
I mean, it's how, I'm very focused on the data and how we can then therefore eventually benefit from the AI. So in terms of change management, it's how you align the team, how you make sure there's consistency across the board. When you operate in multiple of country, operate in different product line and so on, is how you make sure there's all the same definition, understanding around what you call the churn, what you call whatever KPIs you're going to measure. And so there needs to be this kind of change management where there's a full alignment, and this comes back of being very clear what is your value creation plan, how you articulate this value creation plan, what is the metrics and what are you going to measure and how you're going to measure it, and make sure everybody in the company at all level is aligned on this value creation. And so it requires kind of a change management in the sense, if the company is not aligned on those metrics or those measures, and the finance is a key driver because they will communicate, will be able to share with the organization where we are, and therefore being able to accelerate where things are slower, replicate where things are going well in different regions, and again, share this as a common group to improve the overall performance.
Yeah, alignment and mobilization is incredibly important. Any one other comment on people? Anybody? Matt?
I mean, I'm thinking about our early stage biotech companies that we work, and the word change resonates because they're in a constant state of change, right? Clinical trial goes sideways, you gotta readjust the ship. Experiment goes the wrong way, that can blow up your entire set of operating plans for the next 12 or 18 months, right? And so I guess being in that constant state of change, I think of a few things. You need the right people, systems, processes at your fingertips to help marry the changes in plans with the financial decisions that you're making, and you have to do that on rapid turns.
Yeah. Okay, unless anybody has a question, we're going to go to lightning round. Each of you have 1 minute exactly. All right, I want to look at the future. I want to say what excites you, and we'll go, Vipul, we're going to go down the line. So one thing, if you think about technology, looking forward, any type of technology, change, anything, what makes you most excited as a CFO?
I think it's a little bit of what I talked about earlier, which is hopefully we click our heels and in another 18 months there's a decision on which of these LLMs are going to be the long term, just like we saw with the browser technology. I think understanding the verticalized applications and being able to say, well, I don't know, maybe the McKinsey case study saying it's gone from 7% to 41% to 85% of CFOs using and trusting AI to be able to do the work. So to me, if I get excited about what's ahead, I think you get CFOs excited about AI, the whole world's going to be fine. because it's a pretty skeptical group. So that's what I'm excited about.
Excellent. Matt?
For me as a CFO, and your example earlier resonated, instead of working on the visuals of the PowerPoint, you think about the content of the PowerPoint, and we can apply that to so many different pieces. So you remove some of the more basic day-to-day, basic tasks, AP processing, whatever the case might be. It just allows all of us to focus more on the outputs and the high value.
Amy?
I think we're at a tipping point, selling to CFOs. It used to be safer, we would lose to do nothing. It was much safer for a CFO to just say, I'm just going to stick with what I have, the status quo. I think it's no longer safer to do nothing. And I also believe that the younger generation is going to force all of us to do the things that are different, and they're not going to accept paper and phone anymore, and that's going to drive cultural change as well.
On my case, I'm very excited, as I was saying before, on the fact that now we're going to have this predictive finance and kind of spending definitely less time in producing the data and being able to really spend much more time in analyzing this data, which I think is the fun part of it. And so having all the levers that we will have with AI will really, I think, elevate our work and really allows us to be real business partner within the organization and spend more time with the business and really share this added value that we can drive within the business.
I love it. Great way to close, elevating our work and spending more time problem solving instead of pulling stuff together, doing the PowerPoint. Thank you. I just want to thank you all very much. Vipul, Matt, Amy, and James. Thank you. Thank you all for joining.